Hello everyone, I'm Great Author, a fantasy writer that loves putting things on tables and charts, and this is The Science of Fantasy. In this episode of Fantasy Worldbuilding, we are going to talk about fantasy races. The concept as we know it today comes from J.R.R. Tolkien, the grandfather of modern fantasy. Three of the most famous non human races that we can see everywhere in fantasy literature, movies, and games come from him, namely elves, dwarves, and orcs. While its creation was foundational for the fantasy novels that came after him, many authors seem content to simply copy these three, maybe with a few tweaks to make it seem original. My opinion is that if you properly understand what is a race, you can have awesome, unique races, and this is what we are going to learn how to do today. A race has three important aspects: a role, which is the narrative function, a look, which is the physical feel of the race, and the theme, which is the cultural feel. Firstly, the role depends mostly on what story are you going to tell. Here are a few common roles with examples taken from Tolkien's works or other common races that fill the role and ideas on how to make it your own. The ancients or the precursor race, these are a folk older than any other race that is probably more advanced in many domains than the newer ones as it had more time to develop. It also probably prepared the way for the newer races by purging the monsters of the land and teaching them new technologies. They might be extinct, on the brink of extinction, or simply losing power as the new races grow. In Lord of the Rings, these are elves. The equivalent of elves in other works are the fairy folk or the fae, and they check all the criteria of a precursor race. How to make it unique? Don't check all the criteria. Make them still powerful, controlling the newer races, or thought extinct and starting to grow in power again. Maybe they are less advanced than newer races, or so alien that their technology cannot be understood by others. In the novel I'm writing currently, the ancestor race is a species of giant sapient octopi that created humans and was destroyed by them, but still survives as bodiless spirits. The enemy or the evil race, a force that only seeks to destroy and conquer, opposing all the other races, almost always very martial, suiting their antagonistic role, and often ugly savages, almost animalistic, making their death less morally debatable. Because in Tolkien's books these are the orcs slash goblins, that is what you are going to get in the media inspired by them, but often without the corrupted elves idea. In Wheel of Time, the Trollocs are an almost perfect embodiment of the ideals of the evil race. Normally, I don't recommend you to use the enemy in your book because it is nowadays considered a very stereotypical portrayal that has many parallels with real world races. But if you really want it, I think it's a cool race to have. To make it unique, you can make the evil folk be very civilized and beautiful, or give them a powerful reason for their conquest other than they like to kill things. A more extreme take is to make them a pacifist race that unwillingly destroys humans or other races, maybe they have a death aura or something like that. The constructs or the specialist race. These were created with a purpose, often by other races, but not always. Most often, they are really good at what they do and have special properties depending on the material they are built from. Essentially, fantasy robots. For Tolkien, these are the dwarves. Nowadays might sound crazy at first, but hear me out. They were crafted by a Valar, one of the lesser gods, unlike humans and elves, which were created by Ilúvatar. They are also very good specifically at mining and smithing, so much they live underground in mines. To me, that is a robot. Another construct very common in fantasy is the golem, and in one of my unpublished novels, I created a whole society of animated clay sculptures. The easiest way to do unique construct is to choose a special material: crystal, wood, sand. You can also choose rare specializations like healing or, I don't know, collecting mushrooms. Constructs are a really customizable race and I think they must be used more often. The hermits or the reclusive race, a race that is often living in isolated areas, may be told by other races as a legend. They are scarce in numbers and wary of strangers. Sometimes they are much more powerful than other people to compensate for their numerical inferiority. In Lord of the Rings, these are the treants, protectors of the woods. As the least copied race in Tolkien's work, I don't think it's a originality problem here, but the reclusive race has another common variant giants. To be unique, you have to go against what is, my opinion, the trend of making the hermits big. They can be powerful even if they are small, so keep that in mind. The strange ones, or the wildcard race. No, they are not the humans. The wildcard race is a race that has a lot in common with the reclusive race. They are fewer than other races and largely unknown about. But the main difference is that instead of just staying aside, they play an essential role in the plot or history of the world. In other words, they are most likely to be the hero than the mentor. The hobbits in Tolkien Legendarium are exactly that, but interestingly enough, the halfling in the newer media lost that portrayal. To create a strange animal, you have to decide on what quality essential for the plot they have. In The Hobbit, Bilbo had the advantage of natural stealthiness and the dragon not knowing the smell of a hobbit. In The Lord of the Rings, Frodo was less corruptible than a human. The possibilities are limited only by your creativity. The new folk or the successor race. Yes, these are the humans. We want to think of us like that, but this post can also be taken by any other race if the humans are anything else. Maybe the humans are now a really old civilization making them the ancients that taught all they knew to another race or very scattered, transform into the hermits with the rest of the world populated by the actual successor race. Or more likely, they are the enemies opposing all the other races in the typical human colonialist lifestyle, and the story is told from the perspective of the true new folk. The second aspect is the look, how they are perceived by senses as well as their external and internal anatomy. I often see two variations of this that I like to call humans bad and half humans. Human's bat is a variation based on a general human look, but its special features such as a smaller height, such as in the case of dwarfs and halflings, a bigger height in the case of giants, pointy ears for elves, or other traits such as horns and tails, or a different skin color. Half humans are combinations of humans and an animal. Their names are usually the animal's name plus folk. Lizard folk, snake folk, hat folk, rat folk, bird folk. But why all of this anthropocentric view of the races? Why they look so human? You may think this is because before computer generated images, the races in films were just costume actors, but human like races appear in legends of books way before cinematography was invented. No, it is because the humans empathize better with other humans or something similar. This is not a problem if you only make a world building project, but if you want to tell stories in that world, you need at least a human resemblance. But this resemblance can be other than visual, and the best way to do that is by giving them recognizable emotions and means to express them. Take, for example, a race of floating cubes. You can imagine interaction with them won't be very interesting, but if you give them emotions like fear and love, in a way of expressing them like different movement types or changing color, in a way that is intuitive for us, then a reader can start thinking of them like a proper race, not just random monsters. Another thing that is important to give your every race is a defining feature that sticks with the audience. In the case of the previous examples, they have two important characteristics. They float and they are cubes, an example of a movement type and a shape. By applying this change to humans, you can get something as unique as teleporting, two-dimensional humans, or wind riding, tall and thin humans. The last thing I want to say about look is that it doesn't need to be uniform. Humans are very varied as a race, so other races can be too. It is important though to keep at least an important characteristic unchanged. For the floating cubes, you can keep floating and add different shapes such as pyramids and spheres, or you can keep cubes and add movement modes such as gliding or rolling, or keep both and vary another aspects such as transparency. We have the last but not the least aspect, the theme. This aspect can be conveyed in a single word that serves as a sort of foundation for the culture and aesthetics. For elves, while in Tolkien's work they were more than that, they remained in popular culture as nature themed. Other examples are half devils or tieflings that have a logical half theme, the fire, ice, and darkness kind. We also have the stone and metal theme of the traditional dwarves, or the taking gnomes in some settings. Theme is a really powerful tool for creating unique races because it can be in direct contrast with the role or look. If you have a construct race specialized in guiding men through wild, then orientation or travel is a logical choice for the theme. But what if their theme is deception, lies, and mazes? Maybe they were built by an order of ancients who believed that the journey is more important than the destination and you must earn the right to arrive by going through puzzles. After the order disappeared, the construct society was built around these puzzles. Likewise, the sea is a no-brainer theme for a fish folk, but what if we go with the mountains? They can live in cenotes and have to cross rocky ridges to get from one village to another. But it doesn't necessarily have to be opposed with the role and theme. Cooking works great for the git constructs and work can be awesome for the fish folks. All that matters is to let your creativity run wild and don't let yourself restricted by what already exists. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below with your race ideas. The next episode of Fantasy Worldbuilding is going to be about the less organized cousin of a race member, the Masters. Until then, happy worldbuilding, happy writing, happy reading. See you soon!